didn't know what it was. And I went to the interview and it was selling Cutco, which a lot of people feel weird about. And like a lot of people go to those interviews and aren't interested in that job because they're like, oh, I don't want
Mm,
to sell knives. I'm going to go to people's houses. I'm going to call my friends' parents. A lot of people aren't interested in that. But for me, that felt really exciting
okay.
and really fun. And I could see the vision for it right away. So it was like God really opened a door by
Mm.
putting that ad in front of me in the newspaper and that being the only one I called. And I took that job and it set me on a completely different course for the rest of my life.
Hey everyone, this is Alex Humado, and I'm your host, the Life of a CEO podcast. Today, I have a special guest with me, my friend and coach, Justin Janowski. I met Justin from a mutual friend, Sean Keel. For those that know him, Sean is into coaching, sales, and Justin here also is into coaching, and he has done a lot of work in the sales industry as well. He's one of the people I really look up to when it comes to selling from the heart and not no he doesn't pressure anyone when selling. So today I have him here to share his story, how he began and what he did throughout his journey to where he is now so that we can learn from that journey as well. So Justin, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Alex. I'm happy to be here.
No worries. So Justin, can you share a little bit about yourself, where you've been and where you've got into now?
Yeah, I've been in sales since I was 18 years old. I'm 36 now, so that's exactly half of my life. I started out selling Cutco kitchen knives, which is a really expensive knife set in the US that
Wow.
we would sell in-home presentations. And I really loved it. It was a goofy job that not isn't for everybody, but for me, it was really fun. It was really inspiring. I loved being an entrepreneur and I loved getting paid commission.
Mm,
And from there, I went into financial planning. I did a little bit of business to business sales. And eventually I hired some of my own coaches. Hal Elrod and Ben Skemper were my first two coaches I hired. And I loved the work that they did with me. And it called me to want to be a coach. And so I decided I was going to launch my coaching business. And I did for just a few months. And then Ben, who was coaching me, said, hey, come work with our company. We need a salesperson.
mm,
And you can sell with us while you learn the business. And so I
mm,
did. I sold with them their high ticket offers for 3.5 years as the primary sales rep and sold a couple $1 million worth of coaching services for them. And then decided I wanted to start Faith to Influence to bring God directly into my coaching business. And I did that in December of 2018. And I was hoping I would just make enough to get by with my family and that I could do this. And I was nervous and scared when I made that decision, but God blessed my business beyond what I imagined. And I collected over $250,000 in revenue my first year and then have been able to grow since then. And what happened was I was originally working with Christian men, entrepreneurial men of all different kinds, and helping with a lot of different topics, a lot of different things, a little bit more general, but winning more at work, at home, and in their faith. So relational stuff, sales and business stuff, and the faith component. And as my business took off, some of the men in my group were coaches or wanted to be coaches, and they had questions of how I was doing this. And when I coached them, I found it was really fun to work
yeah.
with other coaches. And so I decided after a couple of years to work specifically with Christian coaches. And what I do now is I run a sales school for coaches. It's a
Mm.
6 month program where I help people design and price their business models and offers and learn a high integrity process to sell it, along with developing like some of the mindset pieces around sales and money that are important and sometimes get in the way for a lot of coaches.
Yes, yes. So since I've followed you for a while now, one thing that really stand out to me when you are teaching sales is that sales is about leading people, it's about leadership. So that's one thing that you usually tell. It's not about most of the people out there think that a salesman is someone who pushes you to do something, but usually what you sell and teach people is okay, your personality, your leadership all comes into coaching. It's all about leading people towards the goal that they are looking for. So it's something that I've always been following throughout for the first time I met it till now. And one thing that you really said that stood out to me was you said you started this when you were 18 years. So why did you get into coaching into sales, and what other field weren't Why didn't you go into other field and you started going into sales? What was that
Yeah.
epiphany for you?
That's good. That's a good question. And I appreciate that you noticed that, I believe that sales, when done right, it feels like leadership. It just feels like coaching with an offer at the end of it.
Mm,
It can feel really good. If we do sales the right way, I think people think sales isn't going to feel very good. But if
yeah,
we operate in the right way around sales, it does feel like leadership. It does feel like coaching. It feels good to both sides, whether a sale is made or not, to have that kind of conversation. So that's
yeah.
a good point that you're noting. Thanks, Alex. For me, I wasn't a coach when I was 18. I was in sales, selling for myself. I became a coach. Gosh, I guess I started my business officially when I must have been 34. Really became a coach when I was 30.
Mm,
And in my 20s, I was in sales. And from 18 to 30, I was in sales at a few different companies. And I guess for me, it was a little bit of luck that I ended up in sales and ended up being an entrepreneur. I had graduated high school
mm,
and I was going to my last job was working my dad's construction company the summer before, which was really hard work, doing poured wall basements. And I opened up a newspaper in
mm,
Wisconsin. I was still reading a physical newspaper at that point. When I was 18, I opened up the newspaper to look for a summer job before college, and
mm,
I saw this job. It said high school graduates and college students, $15 per appointment to do this marketing sales job, and I didn't know what it was. And I went to the interview and it was selling Cutco, which a lot of people feel weird about. And like a lot of people go to those interviews and aren't interested in that job because they're like, oh, I don't want
mm,
to sell knives. I'm going to go to people's houses. I'm going to call my friends' parents. A lot of people aren't interested in that. But for me, that felt really exciting
okay.
and really fun. And I could see the vision for it right away. So it was like God really opened a door by
Mm,
putting that ad in front of me in the newspaper and that being the only one I called. And I took that job and it set me on a completely different course for the rest of my life. Now, I
yeah.
do think growing up, I was a social person. I like to talk and communicate. And so that was always interesting to me. I think that previously I thought maybe I'll be a teacher, maybe I'll be a lawyer, something where I could talk and teach and share because I liked communication.
Mm,
And so that was maybe a natural gifting that God gave me. But then putting that ad in front of me in the paper just felt like that God opened the right door at the right time.
mm, absolutely. And what you just said about God being the one to lead you towards that, how did you know that okay, this was what God was leading me to and was not leading me to something else? What
Yeah.
was that decision when it came to that?
Mm. Okay, so that's a really good point. At the time that I started selling Cutco at 18, I don't feel like I recognized that God was leading me to it. I think that looking back, I can see that God opened that door, but it just
Mm,
felt like the next thing. And when I decided I wanted to be a coach, I had really experienced like a couple of great coaches that I worked with, and they impacted my life a lot. And I felt
mm,
like it was a really interesting, fun job that they were doing, but I didn't imagine I was going to do it. I remember I was doing financial services, helping
mm,
people with their investments and insurance, and I was on a group coaching call while I was living in Chicago at the time, and it went really long. The group
mm,
that I was in, it's a 1 hour call, and I was in that group for years, and it was always a 1 hour call. But this one time, that call went 2.5 hours, and it was only six guys on the call, but everyone was sharing their truth. They were
mm,
sharing like the truth of like what they felt like they were called to do in their life or who they were called to be, and they were sharing how they weren't living up to that. They
mm,
weren't living in their truth. They were falling short of it. They were behaving like this even though they knew God was calling them to something else. They might not have used the God language. It wasn't all Christians, but it was a pretty emotional call. Guys were like crying. They were sharing like these really deep things about their lives. And everybody had shared except me. And it got to the end. And I had been out listening to this call on the phone. And Ben said, well, Justin, what about you? Do you have anything to share? And I said, not really. Like, thank you so much, everybody else, for sharing so vulnerably. But I feel like I am living my truth and doing what I'm supposed to do. And I ended that call having not said anything.
mm,
And then it was like 30 minutes later, I was walking down the hall to my apartment and I felt like God hit me with a message in the chest and almost went weak at the knees. Like I really felt it physically that I wasn't living my truth. I wasn't doing what I was meant to do, that I was meant to be a coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I call like I felt it. It was like the first time in my life I feel like God like really like hit me with a hard message that was like unavoidable. And I called Ben, my coach, and I told him that I had that experience and I felt like I wanted to be a coach. And he said, okay, he asked some questions. He was curious. He said, okay, it sounds like you're serious about this. If you're going to be a coach, like when do you think you want to start? And I said, now. And I quit my job the next day. I hadn't thought of quitting it before that day. It was kind of a crazy decision. My boss was pretty upset with me. He swore and was pretty vulgar and like just not happy at all, which I understand. He told me to
Mm-hmm.
take the weekend and think about it, and I did. And I talked to people I know and respected and loved. I talked to my older brother, um, and at the end of the weekend, I just still felt like it was true. It just felt right to me, and that's when I initially decided to become a coach. And then years later, when I was working with another coaching business, I felt like God delivered a different message through another person for me, that I was supposed to start Faith to Influence and start a Christian coaching business instead. And that was delivered a little differently. And I took a month to think about it instead of just one day, but still kept feeling like God was calling me to it. So those are two of the times in my life that I felt like God spoke directly to me. And it can be
Mm-hmm.
hard to discern our will from his, but those times it felt pretty clear.
Wow, wow. Thank you so much for sharing. One thing that really stands out to
Yeah.
me when you share your stories, before you got into coach and when you got into faith into influence, you had no backup plan, you had nothing. You okay, God
Yeah.
called you to do this and you were going straight for it without any back. And one thing that you said was you said something that even if it doesn't work, you have some people that you could reach out to. So that's very powerful. How were you able to
Yeah.
build that network that's okay, if this did not work, I'll be able to go back there, and even
Yeah.
still you were still able to build that. So how was that journey like?
Yeah. Well, I think the important thing that I did before becoming a coach was I developed a skill set.
Hmm.
And I think every single coach should develop a skill set or at least a set of experiences that are valuable to the marketplace. And for me, it was sales. I had that history of sales, and I know that there are always jobs for salespeople. And I knew some people in my network who would definitely hire me for sales because I was good at it, because I developed a reputation as being really good at that one thing that a lot of people valued.
Hmm.
I knew it provided security for me, that like, yes, I quit my job to start this coaching business and it was scary and I wasn't sure how it was going to work out financially. But I knew that if it didn't work, I had a sales skill set I could fall back on, and I
Hmm.
could go to certain people in my network and say, hey, I'm looking for a sales job. And I knew that they would have an opportunity for me. So that skill set gave me confidence. And it's also the thing that helped me succeed in my business right away.
Hmm.
And I know that sales is something that's really hard for a lot of people. And so that's why I decided to make it my life's work to help people find a high integrity, high converting sales process, learn how to do this in a way that feels good for both sides and helps them grow their income, grow their impact, and serve people well.
Absolutely, and I believe that you are already doing it already, since a
Yeah.
lot of people have been benefactor of your work. You've been working with some top guys in the industry, and
Yeah.
if people don't know and they search for your name, they'll see that you are in the background helping a lot of people with their sales and marketing, and
Yeah.
even have networks with people that can even help with other things that you cannot help with. And one thing that you mentioned when you were 18 and you were selling the knives, how was that training? Like, was it
Mm.
door-to-door sales or were you doing the sales online? What was that process like?
It was like door-to-door sales.
Hmm.
I wasn't just knocking on a door though. Like typically I was calling people in advance and asking them if they would be willing to have an appointment with me. And
Okay.
if they said yes, then I'd say, okay, can I come over on Tuesday at 8 o'clock, or would noon be better? And I'd offer them some times and I would go to their house and have the appointment at their house at their kitchen table. So in that way, I was going to their house like door-to-door sales, but I
Hmm.
was setting up the appointment first.
Okay.
And then once I met with them, I would ask them at the end of the appointment for referrals. I would say, who
Mm,
else do you know in the neighborhood who you think would have an appointment like this? And I'd ask them to give me some referrals. And then I would reach out to those people and say, hey, your neighbor Susan told me that you're a great person and I'm doing this thing and it really helps me to have appointments. Would you be willing to meet with me? And I would just ask the referrals to have an appointment with me too. And that's how I built my business. And that's how I built my coaching business, was
mm,
by reaching out to people I knew and asking if they'd be willing to meet with me, and then asking for referrals and meeting with those people. Those were just cornerstones everywhere I was in sales, is reaching out to what I call your natural market, the people you already know, and asking for referrals. And sometimes people don't want to do that. They'd rather work with people they don't know and um, have kind of that fresh start where they don't have like any previous reputation that's
yeah.
existing, but or fear of judgment or rejection from somebody they don't know.
Mm,
But it's easiest to begin with people we know and to be warmly referred where there's already some trust in the relationship.
yeah.
To me, that's been really valuable and helpful.
Absolutely. What you mentioned about getting referrals, that means like you are already speaking with people that know, like, and then trust you. So getting them to refer you,
Yeah.
even working with them becomes easier. The relationship is already there. The reason why I started Life of a CEO was there's been a huge for the past years now, there's been a huge people that have been laid off from their work, and people are venturing into entrepreneurship, and this serves as a means of getting them the tools necessary for them to start. Some people are introverts, some people are extroverts, and getting their business out there will become like, okay, I want to start my business. What else? And sales is one thing that
Yeah.
is the lifeline of any business at all. So
Yeah.
when you decided on starting your coaching business, you mentioned reaching out to people that you already know. So with how many people do you reach out to, and what was the amount of people you got out from that outreach?
Yeah. I made a list of all the people I knew who I thought could be target clients for me, which at the time was Christian entrepreneurs. I went through my phone, every single name. I went through all my social medias, and I made a big list of all the Christian entrepreneurs that I knew. I think the list was probably between 60 and 100 people on it. And
Mm,
then I made a second list at the same time of people I knew who could be referral partners. So they
okay.
might not have been Christian entrepreneurs, but they might know some Christian entrepreneurs. That list was even bigger. That list was probably, I don't know, 80 to 150 people. It was
Mm,
a pretty big list. I can't remember the exact numbers, but collectively between the two lists, I had well over 100 people to reach out to. And I probably sent 50 or 60 messages right away in that
mm,
first week. And that led to my first live retreat. I initially sold $1,000 live 3-day retreat was my first offer. And with those initial 50 people I reached out to,
mm.
and sales calls I held from that, I filled that first retreat with 8 people. This is a picture actually of the people at the first retreat
Wow.
in Colorado Springs. My wife made this for me. She put $1 on the back to represent the first dollar for the company.
Nice.
Um, and by the end of that weekend, like, I 6 of the 8 people joined my mastermind group coaching
Mm,
program. And I had some other sales I made before that event where people bought one-on-one instead of the retreat, one-on-one coaching. And at the end of that retreat, I had over $100,000 in revenue booked for my business. I'd been in business for just like a little over 2 months, 2.5 months.
mm,
But those 6 people joining the mastermind, the event sales that I made, the one-on-one coaching that I made, we had a six-figure business from that. And that was all through the people I knew. And then the second retreat had 5 people at it, and they were all referrals. And
nice.
so like that was, a launching point for, some people I knew introducing me to other people who could be a fit.
Wow. Nice. So from what you've said so far, you had a skill, you had a network to reach out to. You made a list of people to reach out. So where did you get this list? Was it how did you build that list, and like their contacts? What was that process?
Yeah, it was just I took my cell phone out and I just scrolled through and looked at every single name in my cell phone. And I asked
Mm,
myself, is this person a Christian entrepreneur? Like, do they fit my target audience of who I want to work with? If so, I put them on the list,
mm,
even if it felt like they'd be scary to contact. And then I made a second list at the exact same time. So I was saying, if they're not a fit for that, would they refer me to people who are a fit?
okay.
and I put their name on one of those two lists. Or if I didn't think that they fit either of those, I just scrolled to the next name.
Mm,
And I did that for every single name in my cell phone. And then I did it for every name on my Facebook friends list and every name on my LinkedIn list. And it took me hours to put this list together. But in one day, I was able to put together a really big list. And then the next day, I was able to send out those text messages and start holding sales calls. And,
nice.
there's no substitute for that. There's nothing better than having a real call with a real person. And
Mm,
if it's a fit, inviting them to buy, that's the best thing that we can do to grow our businesses.
yes, yes, absolutely. That's really great, and thanks for sharing. So one thing that you really base faith to influence is having time for your business as well as having time for your family. Family time for you is something that I take priority of. So for people that have family that they have their family, how can they optimize their time for their family as well as their businesses?
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I think it's important to have boundaries in our business so that we can make sure that we're honoring our families. I
Mm,
think a lot of people become entrepreneurs to provide a better life for their families, but then get so caught up in it, they spend way too much time working and they don't have the family experience that their kids and their spouses would really like. And so, to me, I think it's important to set boundaries on like how when you take calls, like when you
mm,
start, when do you finish, how many days a week do you want to work? And so like one of the things that I do is I go into my calendar before every year. I'm going to do this soon for 2024, and I first block off all my personal stuff. I block
mm,
off the days I want to take off for the year. I block off some vacation, um, block off time for church, block off family events, date night with my wife every single week. I get like the key things in my calendar that are like gonna fulfill me
mm,
personally and allow me to have like the life I want with my family. I remember like my kids did soccer for a few months, and when they were in soccer, they're 3 and 5, so they'll probably do it again. But when they were in soccer, um, I took them during the day. Like I took them to soccer on like Tuesdays at 11 a.m. or something, because I
mm,
had flexibility in my calendar. I could do what I wanted. And so those things are important to me to make sure I have time for the activities I want with my family and with God. And then I can fill in business from there and
mm,
get the important business priorities from there. Another thing that is important to like make sure we have enough time for our family is to design our business offers in a way that doesn't overwhelm us.
mm,
I'm working on this too right now. It's not like the easiest thing in the world. Like once you've had some success, it can your calendar can fill up quickly. My calendar is filling up a little too quickly these days. I need to work on delegating. I'm adding team members to solve that problem, but I really want to design programs that are scalable and that if I get a lot of people in the program are still going to be really fun for my family and not take too much
mm,
time. So I think there's just a lot of work on the planning and designing part of things, along with setting aside some boundaries and putting in the important family stuff first and then
mm.
adding the work stuff in after that.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting. Then what advice also do you have for people that don't have family yet? How do they balance work and life? How would you advise that
Yeah.
for people that are
I
single?
mean,
Those, yeah.
yeah, there are different seasons of life. And so if someone's single and they don't have a spouse, they don't have kids, like it's reasonable for them to work more if they wanted to. Like it's reasonable for them to hustle more if they wanted to for
Mm,
that season of their life. If they want to work a couple of evenings a week or they want to work on Saturday or something like that, I think that's fine. For Christians, I think it's important to have Sabbath and to take Sunday off and to have that time with God. I
yeah.
still think it's really important for us to have time with ourselves. I think self-care really matters. So like for a
Mm,
single person, I think that they should be in a sports league or they should go out on dates or they should go to the gym or find other hobbies and interests that they might have to engage in and make sure that they have time for themselves to
mm,
develop other parts of their life, not just their business. Um, Especially if they want to have a family someday. It's
yeah.
easier to put the patterns in place now and then continue those patterns. But I think it might be reasonable to say in a certain phase of life, I want to work more than I will in another phase.
Mm.
So I think that's okay, but same thing. That person should still set aside time off, set boundaries, find things in their personal life that fill them up, and make sure that they're filling their own cup and taking care of themselves so that they're able to be at their best for their friends and family and business and all those things. You can't pour from an empty cup, so we got to make sure that
Yes.
there's some self-care time in it.
Yes, yes. From just our conversation right now, one thing that I just noticed right now is you plan for the activities of yourself and your family ahead. How
Yeah.
were you able to learn these principles, and how has it changed your life over time?
Yeah, it's really just been about using a calendar.
Mm.
I put everything in my calendar. Um, it's I'll can I share my screen and show you my calendar really quick?
Okay,
Would that be okay?
let me share. Awesome. You can share your screen.
Okay, great. Here we go. I'll share really briefly here. Um, the calendar that you can see here, like I've got different colors in it for different
Wow.
things. You can see like I've got Zoom calls for different kind of things with different
Mm.
colors. But I also have like I've got my date night that I went on with my wife on Tuesday night. I've got the Milwaukee Bucks games because I'm a big Bucks fan. It's I like to watch the games, and we've got tickets to some of the home games, so
Wow.
those show up in my calendar. My wife tonight's going to a comedy show with some girls. So I've got Kara at comedy show in McWanago tonight, so I know that I'm with the kids, picking them up from school and having dinner on our own. Tomorrow I'm going to work on organizing the garage, so I've got that in here. I just put everything in here. And so like
Wow.
with everything being in my calendar, which it is more full right now than I'd prefer, need to
Mm.
work on that. But with everything being in my calendar, I'm so used to it. I couldn't live without it. Like I need
Wow.
to see my calendar all the time because I've got a lot of calls and it's
Mm.
the only way to stay organized. And and so like if I put something and I'm noticing like I've got zone 2 walk in here on Tuesday. Like, I want to take a walk and get my heart rate into the second zone, like by getting some exercise in. If something is in my calendar, I'm likely to do it. If it's not in my
Mm.
calendar, I might not do it. I'm leaving it to chance. And so
Mm.
for me, um, the way I develop this is just by like really getting into my calendar. I put tasks in my calendar along with the calls. I put the personal stuff in here. I color code it. That really helps me. It helps me stay on track. It helps me like do the things I want to do and prioritize the things I want to prioritize. And
Mm.
um, that's it. I mean, it's just learning to live with a calendar.
Wow, wow. And thank you so much. And you opening up your calendar and sharing us this is really powerful. Looking at how you've structured your day to the last hour is
Yeah.
really powerful. And do you use your phone, or you come before your computer to check your calendar, or you have calendar installed on your mobile to help with that?
I have calendar on both.
Okay.
When I'm at my desk, I use my computer for my calendar. If I'm away from my desk though, I need to be able to just check my phone and see what's coming next and have access to my calendar at all times. I
Mm.
will say I do have email access on my phone, but I have my notifications turned off.
Okay.
For email, I have my notifications turned off for all social medias. I turn
Mm.
off as many notifications as I can so that I don't have my phone like overtaking my life when I'm trying not to work. I'm
Yes.
not going to see a notification telling me about any emails when I'm not working. I can go
Nice.
check it if I want on my own. But I don't need my phone to tell me to check it. I don't even
Mm.
have like, I get a notification on my phone if I get a text message or a phone call, but I don't have it ring out loud. I don't have it make any noise. I don't have it buzz or
Yeah.
vibrate because it's easy enough for me to check my phone. I check it a lot, but I
Mm.
don't want it to go off when I'm doing other things. And so that's another way to set a boundary is by just turning off the sounds of your phone,
Mm.
turning off the notifications on email so that you're checking it when you intentionally want to rather than every time it tells you to check it.
Yeah. Having leadership over your life so that you take full control of it. That's really powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for someone who would want to start their business, but they're looking at creating an event for doing that. How would that process look like? What are the process of creating that event and making it as successful as you did?
Yeah. So okay, they want to like launch their business with like a retreat.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, the first step is deciding when I'm going to run the retreat and like putting it in the calendar.
Okay.
And being like, okay, these are my 3 days, setting it in the calendar, and then actually like booking the event space, especially if it
Mm,
costs you money. I know that might feel scary to book the event space before you've made any sales.
mm,
And that's probably not for everybody, but for me, I went through and I booked the event dates and I paid for the Airbnb. I held my retreat in an Airbnb, which is what I recommend, like the living room of a house where you can cook together, you could sit in the couches and chairs and talk. Um, and by spending the money, then I had to sell it. It gave me a
mm,
lot of leverage to sell it. I'd recommend giving yourself at least 2 or 3 months to sell, to get your first event filled. And then you need to design the event.
okay.
And, probably over like, I like a 3 day event. Typically, what I recommend if you're leading an event in the coaching or service space, you should have an offer at your event for people who want more support, who had a great experience and want to keep working with you. So you
Mm,
make that offer at the end of the second day. So there's time for sales conversations that evening and for people to sleep on it, pray on it, talk to a spouse, and make a decision on day 3 if they want to. And then, I like to open every event with an opening heart story that like shares about myself and like kind of opens the door for them to be vulnerable and share about themselves. Our opening heart story, if done well, tells people that we're ordinary and extraordinary. They ought to
mm,
hear our story and say, wow, Alex is just like me. A lot of the same fears, a lot of the same challenges. And he's overcome some of those things. So I want to be more like him. So
mm,
like there's that ordinary and extraordinary piece, just like me, and I want to be more like him. Then I'm gonna like pre-frame the event, be like, here's what we're gonna do over the next 3 days. And then I teach what I call rules of engagement, how to show up during the 3 days and honor each other and honor ourselves in the experience and get the most out of it. And then I'm gonna have like, 6 or 8 pieces of content throughout the weekend. And
mm,
I might have like 3 or 4 different experiences in the weekend, like a bonfire or a hike or something of that nature. And then I'll make my offer and we'll eat dinner and breakfast and lunch together and we'll wrap up with closing ceremonies on the third day where we all get a chance to share our biggest takeaway from the weekend. And I like to do a process that I learned from my coach and mentor, which is called What I Love About You, where you just
mm,
go around in a circle and everybody at the event tells the other people what they love about them and what they appreciate and respect about them. And it just ends on a high note. So that's how I like to lead an event. Of course, you have to plan logistics like food and location and stuff like that. Make sure that you design it in a way that like fits inside of your budget.
mm,
And then we just need to set a price, which most events, are $500 to a couple $1,000 um, for a small retreat. And then we need to just start having those sales calls. We need to talk to people and make the call all about them. Where are they at? What are their goals? What are their challenges? What do they want? How can we help? And then, share the details of our event if we think it's a fit and invite them to join us.
mm.
And that's it. Those are the keys. That's hopefully a lot. It's kind of a lot to take in, but
Yeah.
hopefully not too much for people
Yeah.
to receive.
Yes. Yes. So
Yeah.
for events, it's all about what you mentioned right now is booking the place. You recommend that Airbnbs, you use the living room so that you have what I
Yeah.
imagine is having like that kind of closeness to the event itself so that people feel
Yeah.
like they are closer to one another instead of like having
Yeah.
a conference room. So that's really powerful. So
Yeah.
um what's advice do you have for any person trying to start their business and they are feeling afraid of selling? What advice do you have for someone like that?
Yeah. Yeah, if you're feeling afraid of selling, I mean, I'd recommend considering getting a sales coach. I mean,
Mhm.
we'd love to help you at Faith to Influence. Is it okay if I share a link to a free
Yes,
support item?
I'll
I don't
even
need to
add that.
type it in. I can say it out loud, but
Okay.
if somebody wants like our sales process, our coach's sales playbook, you can get that for free at
Mm,
goodsalespdf.com.
mm,
Goodsalespdf.com. Or you can go to our sales strategies for Christian coaches podcast and listen in there to like get some sales ideas. But when I talk to somebody who's got like old stories and mindsets around sales that are holding them back, what I invite them to do first is write down the old stories, the stories that are getting in your way, like sales is pushy or sales is greedy or sales is manipulative or whatever old story you're believing that's making sales feel like something you don't want to do. And then just draw a line through that, cross that off, and recognize that like whatever that old story was about sales, it's not a story about you. And
Yeah.
you might write underneath it an empowering truth, like sales with me is, and sales with you can be something totally different. You can decide that sales with me is service. Sales with me is loving. Sales with me is generous. Sales with me is inspiring. And so write the old story and then write the new story and start telling yourself that new story over and over so that you can train your brain and put a new soundtrack on.
Yeah. Wow. That's really powerful. And what's I love about your coaching is you always teach from selling out of love, out of
Yeah.
wanting to help the other person. It's all about having a conversation with one another to
Yeah.
see where their problems are, and even if you even have a solution for them. So it's not about going into sales and say, okay, I'm going to sell you, and they are not a good fit for you, and it becomes a problem. So that's one thing I really love about learning from you. And then when you have your free coaching, the 3-day events, you can see that the community comes together and that support is there. So thank you, Justin,
Yeah.
for sharing this with us. Really loved hearing from you and then speaking with you. And I pray that your business continues to succeed and to continue to impact more people out there.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Alex. This was fun. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.